Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, talk about pressing issues in the world of mixed martial arts and combat sports in general. We'll mix it up with a little boxing spiciness. Talk about the fights over the weekend and just kind of whatever's on your mind. I know there's fight fans out there. I want to talk to you. Because everybody I know up here is football fans. Which I am too. But I like to talk combat sports. So let's get into it. Biggest news coming out of the week, with the exception of being on the coattails of the ever controversial Canelo and Triple G fight, which we'll get to in a second, is obviously the big press conference between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor, MMA's bad boy, but not really as bad as John Jones' bad boy, but ever way more popular, hitting mainstream. So he's going to be the one that we're talking about. So, initial thoughts, impressions. I actually wanted to go live for that event, but Conor McGregor showed up 3 hours late, and by then I was already at work. So, here I am. I'm ready to talk about it, see what's on your mind in the fight world. I did get a chance to watch the press conference in hindsight, and I gotta say, it was interesting. It was a little bit different than what I expected, but in a lot of ways, exactly what I expected, especially from Conor McGregor's side of things. So, without further ado, I'm gonna down off the mask. Try not to give any of that feedback. We'll get right into the discussions. So, first off and foremost, let's talk about that press conference. One thing I found very interesting, Conor McGregor seems as bold as ever, but did anybody else besides me get the impression that he was kind of taking it up a couple of notches, a little bit out of character? I don't know. I like that he was debuting the whole whiskey thing. I want to try that. Does anybody have a price point on that yet? It looks like pretty expensive stuff, but if it's coming from Conor McGregor, then I trust him in the source, and I would like to give it a shot. But it seemed like, more so than he ever has been in the past, a little more distracted with that and all these business ventures that he's got going his way. I gotta kind of wonder, the question is always going to be, how focused is he on MMA coming off such a big fight like that Mayweather one? I mean, he's got money in the bank. I have a hard time thinking that he wouldn't come back if he wasn't still into this whole fighting thing. I don't care what people tell you. It takes a lot of willpower to get in there and get punched in the face, regardless of whether you're getting paid for it or not. Like, that's something you really got to have a passion to do, especially to come back and do it. But it did seem a little bit campy to me, the way in which he was just kind of throwing it around with the whiskey, and just, he was a little more boisterous than usual, which Chael Sonnen, I watched a really good breakdown of his. Like, he pointed out that that's actually a really strategic mental tactic to try to get into his opponent's head. Every single time Khabib was talking, Conor McGregor would kind of shout over him and cut him off, and Khabib's sitting there like, what else is he supposed to do? And he knows he can't go toe-to-toe with Conor McGregor in a verbal sparring match. So, the best thing he has to say is, I will show up for the fight. We will do this, on the date, or we can do it another date, which is probably one of the worst things he could have said, because there's a lot of people speculating that he's going to get injured and pull out of the fight anyways. Not a great look, but nevertheless, I didn't get any sense that Khabib has anything less than 100% confidence in his capabilities to take this fight. And he seems very clear about the game plan. Not that I think anybody was confused as to what that is going to be. And furthermore, just talking about the fight breakdown, the people that I talked to seem to have it going one of two ways, which is what makes it such an interesting 50-50 fight. And make no mistake about it, this is about as close as it gets. This is definitely a pick 'em. But people have either got a landslide one way or the other. I see a lot of people thinking that Khabib Nurmagomedov is just going to go in there and destroy Conor McGregor, just take him down over and over again, eventually break his will, get the submission, TKO with ground and pound, or just win a really super dominant decision. Or people think that Conor McGregor is going to go out there and just blast him out in the first round. I'm actually somewhere kind of in the middle on that, as far as in my predictions for the fight goes. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way, but I kind of tend to think that if Conor McGregor wins, it's going to be later on in the fight when Khabib is getting a little more tired and is getting a little more sloppy with his technique. It seems to be when he's more susceptible to getting hit. And I'm still not sold on his ability to go 25 minutes. I'm going to explain why I think the way that I think on this one, because I know Conor McGregor is no spring chicken come those later rounds either. But I do think that he's got a better idea of what he's up against in those later rounds. And I do think he's got a better ability to gauge his stamina and being able to sustain a certain pace going into those. Whereas Khabib seems to be very aggressive, full throttle, almost just a sprint mode the whole entire way through the fight. Now, case in point, I think we learned way more about Khabib Nurmagomedov in that last fight, the title fight against Al Iaquinta, than we had in every single fight he's had up until then. We already knew Khabib has got sick wrestling, and he will take your ass down whenever he feels like it and hold you down for as long as he feels like it. And if you get back to your feet, he's just going to dump, rinse, repeat. We already knew that. We knew he's susceptible to getting hit. He's taken some hard shots in his fights. Michael Johnson comes to mind. I believe Abel Trujillo even cracked him a couple times pretty good. He didn't get wobbly or anything, but he definitely got tagged up in that one. And there was another fight. So we knew that, but we also knew he had a good ability to recover. But I thought what was really fascinating about the Al Iaquinta fight was we kind of saw a little bit more human side of him. He was definitely fading in those later rounds, and he's not very creative on the striking. When he has to fall back on that and has to rely on that because the takedowns aren't there and the gas tank isn't what it should be, he just kind of sits behind that jab. And it was fooling Al for a little while, but then eventually he started finding a way around that, started mixing up his combinations. And I think a more confident fighter or a more competent striker who probably hadn't taken the fight on short notice, like Al did, probably would have capitalized a little more on that in the later rounds. And that's where my perceived liabilities for Khabib factor in to him against Conor. And another thing about Conor, or that we saw against Al, is Khabib is really good at taking down a stationary target. But a lot of the guys that he's fought, pretty much they just stand there and try to like wing these haymakers at him, or they don't have a lot of lateral movement. But one thing that is so different about Conor is he's got very good distance control, distance management. And one thing I really like that Al was doing is he was never letting Khabib get in that range where he could get in tight and dip low and get behind his hips. Al was pretty good about sprawling out early in time and just maintaining that outside distance, throwing a lot of counter shots. And I got to feel like if somebody like Al Iaquinta can do that on the outside, then Conor McGregor's chances are going to go way up. Now, the question with Conor McGregor is, where do his liabilities come in when it hits the mat? We've seen him get choked out before. We know he's got some submission losses on his resume. As far as the gas tank goes, I don't put they say you're only as good as your last fight. So if we look at Khabib's last fight, he definitely gassed out in the later rounds. And that was kind of an issue for him. I don't know if that's due to the weight cut, cardio management issues. Me personally, I think it has more to do with the pacing than anything else. Because like I said, he's always at a sprinter's pace. I'm not a big believer in the USADA era in the dominance of these folk style, freestyle, and Greco-Roman wrestlers. I'm just not. You look historically at the guys who were able to maintain that kind of a pace in a title fight, and the only two that come to my mind, I'm not saying these are the only ones, but the only two, and this was even before USADA days, who were able to maintain a dominant wrestling pace, outside of George St. Pierre. I guess he's kind of a different story. But outside of him, the only two that I can think of that were able to maintain that were Sean Shirk, and in most of his title fights, Hermes Franca for sure against Kenny Florian, and Chael Sonnen in the first Anderson fight, and both of those guys popped for steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, whatever you want to call it. If you want to be politically correct. Chael Sonnen even popped for EPO, which is a big cardio one. And I'm just not convinced that guys can maintain that pace for 25 minutes. And I understand like Chad Mendes took the fight on short notice when he went up against Conor, but it was the same basic concept. It was a very predictable fight to me because I thought, yeah, of course he'll come out strong. I think Khabib will dominate the early rounds, similar to what Chad did. But as soon as he gets tired, I feel like that's where he's really susceptible to a lethal striker like Conor. If you're looking at Conor's last fight, he gassed out, against Floyd Mayweather. But I think there's a little more to it than that. First of all, you got to wonder how much of a factor those body shots played into it. Floyd did a lot of body work early in the fight, in the middle of the fight. I guess more so towards the middle of the fight, but definitely towards the end. That's what he ultimately ended up finishing him with, which can have a big factor on your cardio or your ability to go the distance. And then you got to think, so he got finished in the 10th round, probably could have gone a little bit longer if he wasn't taking the damage. That 3-round or 3-minute rounds is 30 minutes of fight time. Okay. Total time in a UFC title fight would be 25 minutes max. And I understand you get more breaks in between the rounds because it's 10. So, he had already had 9 breaks in between that as opposed to like the 3 that he'll get or the 4 that he'll get in a UFC title fight. But still, I think those things are just worth noting and pointing out. So I guess to summarize it, at this point, I'm leaning more towards Conor McGregor. I think if I got to put my money on somebody, I'm leaning more towards him. But man, we all know Khabib could easily go out there and just wash him out in the first round, complete ground control, or just dominating for 25 minutes straight. Either way, I'm excited for this fight. I think it's a good one. I like the undercard too. So yeah, I think we're in for a good time no matter what. If you want to talk about the Triple G and Canelo fight, man, I hate to be the guy and say I told you so. I did a breakdown video for the original one way back in the day that's got more views than any video I've ever done. And what I said in that one is basically my thoughts going into it. I had to pick Triple G. I thought he's the bigger fighter. I think Canelo is probably the more technical, but not by a whole lot. And I thought the size difference on Golovkin would be the bigger difference because it would allow him to pressure Canelo, get him up against those ropes, hurt him with those body shots, kind of wear him down a little bit. I was so disheartened by the decision in that one because I thought that was a blatant robbery. I really thought Golovkin had it. I know a couple of people, like Jeff Mayweather, and I think maybe Bernard Hopkins had scored the first one for Canelo, but I just didn't see it. And going into the second fight, I was excited for it because of the matchup. I mean, the first one definitely delivered on the action front, and so did this one, I feel like. But I kind of saw that ending coming. I hate to say it, but as long as Golden Boy is promoting, the joint, if Golovkin doesn't get a knockout, he's not going to win that decision. That's just all there is to it. So that was unfortunate. The fans did win, though. It was a great fight. I hope Golovkin goes on to have a couple more before he retires. I would love to see him fight the Charlo brothers. Mix it up with some big names. I mean, why not just keep going after him, headhunting him? He's already got a solid resume. Canelo does as well. This is a good time for boxing. Deontay Wilder fighting Tyson Fury. I just saw today, just before I went live, Tyson Fury's Instagram. He's signing the contract. That's going down. I'm almost more excited about that than I am for the Anthony Joshua and Wilder fight. Like that is a good fight. People sleep on Tyson Fury, man. I don't feel like a lot of people know about him because he's kind of got this like stigma of being the crazy guy, and he was out of the limelight for a long time, dealing with his issues. But man, that's one hell of a fight. And anytime, like especially if you're a strict MMA fan, you don't really check out boxing that much, give this one a look. Like anytime you got heavyweights in there, it's way more exciting. I mean, the technique is not as polished to the point where they're trying not to get hit, but they're also throwing bombs. Hey, especially a guy like Deontay Wilder, he just brings. I've always wanted to see what would have happened if he would have, taken a little stint into MMA. I think he could wash out a lot of guys. I don't know if he would be elite, but he's entertaining as hell. He's got that mentality that I'm going to go in there, I'm going to knock your head off. I'm going to hang my hands low. I'm going to do whatever it takes. He's a fans of boxing fans kind of fighter. Like he's He's all about the action. And Tyson Fury is just pure entertainment, man. The guy is hilarious. He's a gypsy or a traveling person, as you're supposed to call them over there. And just the way he talks, he's got so much bravado, so much confidence, and he's looking leaner and meaner than he ever has in his entire career. Apparently, he got sober. He's very motivated right now. So I'm stoked about that one. Later on this year, coming off the coattails of this Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor fight, it's going to be very interesting. So I kind of wonder what you guys have to say about Conor Khabib. We all are predicting. I kind of figured a lot of people would be kind of riding Nurmagomedov's jock, especially since Conor's taken all this heat with the bus incident. He's been out of the game for a while, coming off a loss. It's really hard for fighters to get that respect coming back, especially when they talk a bunch of mess and then just get kind of showed up like he did. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of form he can return to. As far as what I've seen, and I'm not by any means saying that this is like the most credible source is just like Instagram, but I have noticed how active he's been with the training videos, and it looks like he's taking it very seriously. And John Kavanagh, his head trainer, had done a couple of interviews where he's saying, like, we're trying to simulate fights every day with Conor to try to get that ring rust out of the way by the time he hits the cage. And historically, Conor has done pretty well against wrestlers. I know that's kind of a stupid thing to say considering he's only really faced like what, Chad Mendez. I would throw Eddie Alvarez up there, even though he didn't actually wrestle with him. So we'll see. I'm excited for the matchup in a lot more ways than one. I'm glad that Conor's really taking the initiative to kind of pump this fight up. I enjoy the press conferences, man. I look forward to them almost as much as I look forward to some of the smaller cards. So tune in tomorrow night. I want to try to go live for the fight. Now, I'm a huge Thiago Santos fan. I think that dude's amazing. He always puts on entertaining shows, and I'm excited to see him mix it up tomorrow night. I can't actually remember who else is on the card, but I'll at least catch the main event, and maybe we can chat about it. I'll definitely show the highlights and the finishes of that fight. So anyway, that's pretty much all I got for this one. I'm going to do another breakdown on just Conor going in this fight, and then another one on Khabib, and then like a final like kind of prediction and analysis leading up to the fight, and then do a live one for the broadcast. Y'all take care. Ghostface Killer. Tune in. More MMA discussion. I'd like to hear you guys' feedback. Yeah. Stay up, fight fans. Out.